Hey guys, welcome back to another video, and today I'm going to put you through a complete leg workout, but instead of how I usually do it where I focus a lot on your glute and hamstring, I'm going to take you through a full workout that's going to engage your quads, your hamstrings, and your glutes. So for me, I'm very quad dominant. So a lot of the times I only really want to focus on engaging my hamstrings and my glutes because I don't want my quads to keep growing. But I've been getting a lot of requests to incorporate some quad exercises and some things that I do that I find helps my quads. So I figured I would do that for you guys and put it in. And I'm also going to do a voiceover for the workout so I can give you guys some advice and tricks that I find work for me, and you guys can try them out yourself and see if they work for you. And I hope you enjoy the video and stay tuned for a lot more content. Exercise 1 is leg extensions. So this is a quad focused exercise. So you are going to get quad engagement like crazy if you do this exercise and if you do it properly at that. So biggest tips are going to be keeping your back flat against the cushion, your bum flat against the cushion. If you find that your back or your hips are moving, you want to make sure to focus on keeping them still or decrease the weight to make it a little bit easier. You're going to put the lower cushion just above the ankles. It could be a little bit higher than I have it. I didn't readjust it. You're going to come up for full extension, really engage that quad muscle, and then control it on the negative. So even as we are showing it, we could be keeping more control throughout the negative portion because you do want to put that work on the quads throughout the entire movement, not just on the positive, but also on the negative. We're then moving on to a squat. So I paused it here to show you how the form is. So you're going to want to keep your back straight. You're going to be a little bit wider than shoulder width, and you're going to want to focus on pushing your knees out as you drive up and keeping all of the weight on the heel of your foot. So I don't go extremely low on these because I don't have the mobility to do so. So when I start going really low, I end up having a bit of a pelvic tilt, or a wink is what you want to call it, sorry. And it's basically when your bum just winks under, and it's because you lack the mobility to do so. So I keep it at a range of motion that I can do the exercise properly, and that's the biggest thing. So again, feet just outside of your shoulder width. You're going to drive down almost like you're sitting in a chair, and you want to focus on driving up through the heel of your foot and pushing your knees out as you drive up, and really engaging your quads, your glutes, your hamstrings, everything as you drive up. You're also going to want to focus on keeping your chest up and your core nice and tight throughout the movement, taking all the pressure off your lower back. So how Jenny is performing this is really good. She did a little bit of a wider stance than me, but that's all right. We then moved on to the Sumo Deadlifts. And again, you're going to want to really scrunch your booty. You got to get that ugly butt squeeze going to really engage the glutes on this exercise. And you're going to want to drive from the heel of your foot again and really squeeze your glutes to the top. Some key things are going to be keeping your chest up, keeping your back nice and straight throughout the entire movement, and also a nice wide stance with your feet pointed slightly outwards. So you're going to drive through the heel, thrust your hips forward, and you're going to have a bit of a pelvic tilt forward as you do this movement because you are thrusting your hips forward. It's almost like when you do a hip thruster and you're thrusting your hips up and outwards, you're going to have that same kind of movement throughout this, and it's really going to get those glutes engaged, get those glutes working. And it's actually one of my favorite exercises for the glutes because I just feel it so much, even without a crazy workload. So again, just really focus on squeezing your glutes at the bottom and driving up through the heel of your foot, so you're driving up with your glutes. If you're feeling this in your lower back, I would suggest focusing more on that mind-muscle connection with your glutes, along with perhaps lowering the weights because you don't want to be putting the tension on there, and really focus on activating your core. So if you aren't activating your core and your chest isn't up, it is likely you will feel it in your lower back. And that just means you have to adjust your form and correct a few things, and you'll feel it in the specific area that you want to be targeting, which is your glutes. So I would prefer to do this exercise at the beginning of a workout, as it is a more compound workout. So that is why we did it as the third one in. And again, just tips are chest up and back straight. So we then moved on to a sissy squat variation. So a sissy squat can be performed various different ways, and if you go on Google or YouTube, you'll see various ways of doing it. I like to do it like this. basically you feel all of the tension in your quads, and if you don't, then you're not doing it correctly. I also held on a little bit because I felt like I wasn't able to get that range of motion without holding on, without falling, but I could have gone a little bit less down and keep the tension more on my quads. Jenny is doing another variation. Because she's taller, she could do it on the bench. As I'm shorter, I can't get any range of motion when I do it here. But again, you're gonna wanna keep all the pressure on the heel of your foot, but as you drive up, it's all quad activation. And it burns. It doesn't look like it's difficult, but if you are really focusing on flexing your quads throughout and keeping that tension on your quads through that entire exercise, you are gonna feel it heavily on those quads. And it's a great exercise for quad activation. Then moving on to lunges. So I do lunges pretty much every workout. When I'm focusing more on my glutes, I'll do a more reverse lunge and I won't come all the way up to the top. I'm doing a walking lunge here, which I find I get a lot more quad activation as well as the hamstrings and glutes. And I'm driving up through the heel and all the way up. So you're really going to feel it in the quad as you drive up because you're going all the way full range of motion. You're going to want to keep your chest up, your core tight like always, and you're going to have a 90-degree angle with the front foot. So if you find that your knee is going over your foot, you're going to want to create a wider stance so you can have that. And you're going to want to sit back into it. So your weight will want to shift forward a bit, especially depending on the person, but try to keep your body more neutral and shifting the weight back. And then as you drive forward, really feeling it in your quad. We're then moving on to a unilateral. I like to do stuff like this because you're going to be able to engage one leg at a time and really focus on maybe muscle imbalances that you potentially have, which you won't get that kind of correction if you're doing it together. So the biggest thing with this is you're not going to want to lock your knee out. You're going to want to have a slight bend. We are holding onto the treadmill for stability purposes. If you don't need to hold on, don't. It's going to make it a little bit more challenging, and if you have that kind of flexibility and balance, I suggest doing it that way. But the biggest thing is you're going to want to keep your back straight. Again, like I said, chest up, slight bend in the front knee, and focus on keeping that kettlebell nice and close to your body and really just letting your front leg completely stretch and getting that hamstring and glute engagement. And nice constant control, so nice and down slowly, up slowly, keeping that tension on your leg the entire time. And again, if you can perform these without holding on, I really recommend doing so. That's probably something that I'm going to try to work on, is being able not to hold on. I find I can kind of do it with one side, but once I switch over to the other side, I definitely lack the balance in performing that correctly. So again, this is really great, and because you're doing it unilaterally, you're going to be able to work on those muscle imbalances. So I'm not sure about you, but I know one side of one leg is a little bit stronger, and I have a little bit more glute hamstring development on one leg. I can't really tell now, but when I would be competing and I would lean out, I could definitely see a difference because one was more developed, and that's why I would focus a lot on unilateral type exercises with my legs just so I could correct that muscle imbalance. And that's also good because it's going to force you to focus on a lot of the other smaller muscles because you have to stabilize your body as you're performing this exercise. So I suggest starting off with a few compound movements like I did, and then moving towards maybe unilateral and more accessory work towards the end. And that is what we're doing here. And if you don't have a kettlebell, that's fine. You can use a dumbbell or anything else. The kettlebell's nice because of how you can hold it. But again, if you don't have that, I would suggest just using a dumbbell. And some people will even perform these with on the Smith machine, which I've done before, which works really well too because it also gives you that balance. But if you're going to perform them without holding on, I recommend doing a dumbbell or kettlebell. We then moved on to some hip thrusters. So this is, again, something that is kind of going to mock like a hip thruster with the bar when you are down your knees, because the kettlebell swings kind of, you kind of do that movement with your hips. So your hips are going to go forward and your pelvis is going to tilt up, which is going to get you that really great glute engagement. So I just paused it here to show you how your hips are going to thrust forward and up, and that's going to engage your glutes fully, and you are going to squeeze them and have that like ugly butt or whatever you want to call it look, because you are fully engaging those glutes. And again, keep your back nice and straight, keep your chest up, and really focus on driving through the heel of your foot, which is going to put the tension on your glute. So this is a very specific glute exercise, and if you're trying to grow your glutes, I really suggest putting this in your workout along with hip thrusters and the Sumo Deadlifts. Well, honestly, a lot of the exercises I've shown are great for glute engagement, but that one's awesome. This is another really great one for glute engagement. It's basically a back extension, but it's with glute focus. And the biggest thing is that you want to squeeze at the bottom. So as I come down, I'm squeezing, then I thrust up, and as I get to the very top, you're going to want to drive your hips and everything through the cushion as much as you can, really squeezing. So as I'm holding that, I'm driving my hips through that cushion. Like I'm trying to go through the cushion, and that's how hard I'm squeezing. And you want to, it's a very small range of motion, so I'm not going down very far, I'm not going up very far. If you do that, then you're probably going to engage more of your lower back, which is not what you want. So it's a very small range of motion, but you're going to get that great glute engagement, especially if you're focusing on squeezing your glutes through the cushion. So that are some tips and tricks basically on a complete leg workout, where you're going to start with your quad, where you're going to get the quad engagement. You're going to work on your quads, and you're also going to work on your hamstrings and your glutes. So it's going to be a full leg workout as opposed to just a glute hamstring type workouts, which I usually show. And I'm going to attach the actual workout to the very end where you can screenshot it. And hopefully you guys enjoyed the video, and stay tuned for a lot more stuff, and have a great day. Bye guys, thanks for watching.